Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Connections. Do you like our new set? Yeah, it's beautiful, huh? Well, as you know, the Activities Committee now does Community Connections, and we thought it'd be fun to have panels of residents or staff that have a common interest. So for today, we have ministers. Yay! Isn't this fascinating? So before I turn it over to our own Oprah Winfrey, Marie Rosa, I'm just going to introduce the panel. So we have Reverend Dawn Sangre here, Reverend Lynn Mel, Reverend Tyler Jones, and I'm not Reverend Joe Cosentino, so I'm going to get off. You could bless me, that's true. And I will turn it over to Marie.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for giving me the chance to become an interviewer. This is the first time I'm interviewing, so bear with me. But I feel blessed because we have the ministers. I feel blessed. Can you hear me that way? Okay. Okay. Excuse me? Right, I know. I hate that, but okay. All right. Should I sit down or stand up? Okay. All right, we'll start with Tyler Jones. Tell us a little bit about your background and why and where you became interested in the ministry.
I grew up in the Episcopal Church in the Northwest, in a town north of Seattle, my first 8 years, and then in Seattle until I got out of college at age 22. Uh, in the little town we lived in, the minister was my best friend's dad. So he was a known quantity. He was a real person. He was really friendly and fun. He loved to do things with kids. And I have never since felt any distance between me and my church, my family's church, and I've enjoyed learning more about it over the years. Uh, I did take a detour into spiritual but not religious in my 20s and early 30s, and when I decided to go back and find out what was going on in the Episcopal Church because I understood there'd been some significant changes, I was immediately drawn in by the more community relationship between the people and each other in the congregation. And so I started getting involved in church committees, church projects, church vestries. And as my life continued, I would take on more and feel more connected and really enjoyed doing that. I worked through a variety of different careers as I uh, aged. We had two kids and they got out of school and we moved to Florida from Alaska, and all kinds of excitement happened. But at one point it finally was suggested to me by somebody in the church that I consider my deep involvement leading to ordination, which I considered. And Molly was there, and she's here now. And I decided to give it a look. I wasn't particularly interested in going back to school, so I had to do a little preliminary work. But my ordination took place in 2004. I was age 56, and it has turned out to be a real delightful experience to be engaged in the life of the church, engaged with the lives of the congregants, and to have my faith deepen and become richer, not just for me, but for others.
Thank you, Tyler. It's very nice to hear that you developed an interest in the ministry early and developed your career as it went along with some other, roads. Let's see. Oh, where were you and what were you involved before you came to Woodland Pond?
To take a deep breath for this one. As I said, I moved to Alaska at age 22. I was a deckhand on an ocean tug and thought Alaska was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen or would see. think so far that's true. So I moved to Alaska at age 22, lived in Fairbanks, which is a pretty rough spot for a couple of years, and then moved to Anchorage where Molly was living. And we met and married and stayed in Alaska 25 years. I graduated from journalism to politics, or maybe regressed, I'm not sure. But at any rate, I had a political job for a U.S. senator for 7 years. And then after that, I went into the maritime field working in public seaports around Alaska. And then when we left Alaska and moved to Florida, I had port jobs down there. At each place, as I mentioned earlier, I just kept getting more deeply involved in parish ministries. One was a homeless feeding program in Miami, where I'd get up and go down to the cathedral, which was our church, and hand out bags of food to really indigent immigrant day workers. And that might be the only food they'd get all day. And we were passing that out. And I said to somebody, it felt like I was passing out communion. It felt holy that we were helping these people survive another day in so-called paradise. And gradually, when my contract was up at the Port of Miami and they told me they weren't going to renew it, I said, well, I'm not going to stick around here and work through lunch again. I think I'll go to church at the midday mass. And I went to the mass, and the priest said, what are you doing here? And I explained that I was no longer employed, so I might as well. And she said with a big smile, well, I think that's great. I think you should stop trying to make this maritime thing happen and consider going to seminary and becoming an Episcopal priest. So that's what led me off, not for the first time thinking about it, but for the first time doing something about it. That was 1999. I went to seminary in 2001. 9/11 was the second week of my seminary experience in New York City. And 3 years later, I graduated and went to Germany and got in 20 years.
Wow, you really traveled around. And imagine the difference between Alaska and Miami, Florida. What brought you to Woodland Pond?
A couple of things. One is that we moved to Poughkeepsie in 2006. And so we learned about Woodland Pond, I guess, 2 years later when it was getting started. And we knew about CCRCs because Molly's folks had been in one, and it had been really a good choice for them. Their daughter, Molly, was in Alaska. She wasn't going to be much help in their retirement. They lived in New Jersey. So we thought, we should look at this, and we should consider doing something like this ourselves. A decade later, I think we came over and got on the waiting list and started talking seriously to Woodland Pond. Just a footnote, after a couple of years of making no progress on the Oak apartment list, we started looking around and actually put money down on a different CCRC. But then Courtney called with a miracle that we had a place to go. So that's what got us here.
Good to hear. I'm glad to have you here.
Take a photo.
What activities are you involved in here at Woodland Pond? And especially during the month of December, did you have anything particular you did in ministry?
I just happened to have made a list. I think clearly for me, having a built-in community here that welcomed me and was interested in me and I found interesting also was just huge. I mean, if I'd come in here and been bored by the people and the things they did, it would be a drag. But that's not what happened. I've become part of the community. I enjoy socializing. I can't do half the things I want to do because I'm busy doing other stuff. I'm active in the exercise class. I was in this very room this morning with the heat on rather than the air conditioning, which was quite unfortunate. I'm part of the Woodland Hikers, the Interfaith Committee, the Interfaith Forums, the Welcome Committee, and I enjoy meeting the new residents and trying to be helpful. I'm part of the Friends of Bill W. gathering, Pondaliers. Don't miss the concert tonight instead of last night. Bible study, which just happened, our Eucharistic service once a month, and pastoral care. I am working as a priest at this time at Christ the King Episcopal Church in Stone Ridge. It's a very part-time gig. I do a Sunday a week, a Sunday a month, and some pastoral care to parishioners who are needing spiritual attention. Now, you asked another question that I have an answer to. What are your activities as a pastor for the month of December? Yes. Visits with people in the health center and members of my parish who are hospitalized or homebound, conducting the Bible study, providing Eucharistic service, and both the regular service once a month now in the health center great room, and then in people's apartments on request, and being involved with the Interfaith Committee.
Thank you. What would you consider one of your major accomplishments in the ministry?
Sure glad I wrote this out. Being able to use my faith and be helpful to people in crisis, people pondering religious issues, people planning their funerals, people wondering what Episcopal means. All these things are the kind of thing that just give me delight. I like talking about this stuff. I've also helped 3 churches search for a new priest. In 2 cases, we were successful. I've overseen large construction projects and kept them on budget. And I think I have fairly clearly found my calling. Molly even tells me and other people that I'm a happy man.
It's great to hear about all your ministry work. Perhaps some of us would like to take advantage of a few of your Bible studies and stuff. Do you have any advice for the audience here as a pastor?
The question I'm going to answer is that's a trick I learned from my boss, the politician. If you don't like the question, answer a different one. What have you learned in life at Woodland Pond? Do you have any advice for our audience? I think in all of my vocational endeavors, on ocean tugs, in the newspaper business, in politics, in the port field, and now in ministry, I found it important and fulfilling to engage as much as I can and to learn and contribute. This extends to my personal life and my marriage as well. Never give up.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think we all try to do some good while we're here because this is our home and this is our family. Okay, thank you, Tyler. The next one is Lynn. Oh, wait, okay. Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you entered the ministry?
I'm born and raised a St. Louis girl, a Cardinal fan, went to public schools there, graduated from Southeast Missouri State College, now University in the Boot Heel of Missouri. Met my husband in St. Louis because he was a student at Concordia Seminary. I graduated from seminary, from Union Seminary. When we moved to New York, I switched there and graduated from there in '84. I, like Tyler, was what you call a midlife student or something like that. Could not start seminary at a time when a lot of men did, because the Lutheran Church wasn't letting women do it. So that meant my course of study was a little bit different. Music was always important to me. I went to college on a music scholarship, and I think that's one of the main reasons, outside of being raised in the Lutheran Church, that I maintained such a strong relationship with it, because it was always called the singing church after the Reformation. And of course, we've got J.S. Bach as one of our people. So yes, it's just, no, it doesn't get any better than that. No, it's not, yes, right. Get any better than that. No. professor from class on the theory of the 7-day creation and where dinosaurs fit in with that. And I was not appreciated very much, but I've just always been a questioner from little on and into adulthood. And my husband kind of sensed that with me and kind of encouraged me to keep on studying and looking. And on my own, I was reading a lot of scripture. And finally, the invitation to consider a call to ministry came from him because he came home for the umpteenth time in a row to find me sitting in the middle of the kitchen at the table reading a commentary on the Gospel of Luke while dinner was burning on the stove next to me. And he finally came over and very gently sat next to me and put his arm around me. And he says, have you ever considered that maybe you weren't called to be a cook? And maybe your calling should be going to ministry. And he was my biggest supporter that way and helped to expedite my getting into a seminary then, and to promising me that if I thought I couldn't go because we had 3 small children still then, he encouraged me to think about this, that if he was a part of giving birth to those children, which he thought he was, that certainly he could be part of raising them in a more substantial way than he was, because he was in a church in Kingston at that time. So he gave me all the breaks possible to be able to start studying for the ministry.
It's great to hear about your relationships and how your husband really helped you to forge on to the right areas. Where were you before you entered Woodland Pond, and what were you doing?
Well, I taught high school in St. Louis. And then when my husband received a call out to Long Island, to Hicksville, which I really questioned because I thought, you're moving from St. Louis to Hicksville. Do they even have plumbing in Hicksville? But he assured me they did. And so then I could not teach anymore. And so I was involved in various little occupations, but mainly raising our 3 children there. And working at the church. I directed choirs, 2 choirs. I taught the teenage Bible class, was instrumental in women's groups and everything. And then from there, he took another call to New York City, which is where I finished up ministry finally. I started the study while we were in Kingston, interestingly, with the backing of a congregation that couldn't understand a woman wanting to do this when you weren't allowed, but wholeheartedly supported me, which I thought was miraculous for that time. Yeah. And when he left New York City and took another call out in Long Island, I started work as a hospice chaplain at St. Charles Hospice out in Port Jeff. And then finally was called to co-pastor with him at a church, a rather large church in East Northport on Long Island. And after we retired, we went to Florida and we lived there for 13 years. Florida. We were snowbirds.
Lynn, what brought you to Woodland Pond?
What brought us to Woodland Pond was the fact that my husband's health was failing. And Philip, who you might know, who's the director of the health center, came down to visit us, and he found me sleeping on the sofa to help take care of him and realized this was not a situation that could last. My health was going down as well as his. And so he encouraged us to move up here where we had family around us that could support us. And so he moved Gary into skilled living. At that time, they were taking people still from the outside and had openings, and gave me about 3 months to sell the house, pack it up, and move up here. And that's how it happened. Yeah.
You know, moving and transitions are very difficult for many of us.
Yeah.
Right here in Woodland Pond, what are you involved in here so far?
Took me a while to get involved, but once I did, I do a 1 month communion and Bible study class called Second Saturdays. I'm involved in interfaith in doing three big services a year, the Good Friday service, the Thanksgiving service, which we just had, and Tyler assisted me in it. And on the 21st, a Lessons in Carol service, which is our second one. It really went over well last year. And I encouraged you all to think about it. If you really want to get together and do some singing with Gene Aldwell accompanying the carols, it's going to be a nice service. I love being in Shalom. I'm really ripped apart that it's ending, and we're trying to think of ways that can continue. I'm in Play Readers, current events, and of course the Interfaith Committee.
Lynn, would you like to share some of your major or any major accomplishment in your lifetime in the ministry?
Probably my major accomplishment was that I did get a call and I was ordained. I was the first woman in the metropolitan area of our particular branch of the Lutheran Church to be ordained. And the obstacles were tremendous. Still were after I was ordained, as I'd be leading some services at our synod conventions. And at one time, there were about 15, 20 men that got up and walked out. So it took a while. That's the old German in us, the Lutheran Church. But I realized how you had to fight to get there. But once you got there, you didn't need to fight anymore because you were the living, walking example of what the church could be. And it was a very freeing experience.
It's a great attitude. And I'm sure you fulfilled your ministry well. What have you learned from life here at Woodland Pond?
What have I learned here? I tell you, I've been here 4 years now. The first couple of years were rough. Being yanked out of Florida so quickly and suddenly was not easy. And I didn't want to come, but I had to come. It's different than most of you who spent a lot of time researching and wanted to come. But what I finally realized, and a lot with my son's encouragement, get over here to independent living. Be open, meet people, because the people are wonderful here. And it was the best advice I ever got, being open to people from different backgrounds. Interfaith describes my friendships here. They are just wonderful with some of the people that I've really become close to and who have really ministered to me in some rough days since my son passed away in September. And they've become just wonderful, caring friends to me.
Thank you. You're going to make me cry.
I don't want to do that.
Any advice for our audience today?
I think I don't think I need to say it to these people, but it is that remaining open, listening to other people, and being open to different backgrounds and different ways of thinking, because it's a big world out there and there's a lot that we can still learn.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you, Lynn. Thanks, Lynn. Our next pastor, I feel blessed because she lives 2 doors away from me. And I made her acquaintance as soon as I came here. I think she was a big item in my adjustment to Woodland Pond. So thank you, Dawn. I'm going to be asking you similar questions.
Sure.
What is your background and what brought you to become part of the ministry?
Well, I grew up in a minister's household. My father was a minister. My mother was a church musician, and we were Methodist. And my earliest memories are of being in little parishes, living in the parsonage, and entirely involved in the life of the church. So I've always been part of organized religion, if you will.
Where was your first like background as far as where you lived and what you did?
My father was itinerant. He needed to move around. So I spent my childhood in different parts of the country, in different areas of the country with these various churches. And until the war, and then he enlisted and was a chaplain. And we went back to live with our grandparents. And after the war, Dad had a number of different jobs, all of them related to religion. And so we just kept moving around until I went to college. That was the first time in my life I'd ever lived in one place for 4 years. So it's a lot of moving around.
And what brought you to Woodland Pond?
Well, Mother and Dad ended their lives in a CCRC, and we always thought it was a really good model for coming to the end of your time in a community. It had worked very well for them. They lived in Brethren Village in Lancaster, Pennsylvania for almost 20 years. And so we had this model, and then it got to the time when the house was hard and the yard was hard, and we started looking around, and Woodland Pond really looked like the best choice for us. So we actually came, signed up, put our house on the market, put down our money, and then we came to brunch. And Paul and I have lived here for 8 years, so we were still in our 70s. We came to brunch. We saw all the old ladies with their walkers, and we got cold feet. We backed out. We took our house off the market. We took our deposit back. We undid the whole thing. And then Paul's cancer came back, and that turned us around. I'm happy to say that he is cancer-free, and we've lived here for 8 years. So win-win all around.
I know some of us may be familiar with your background in New Paltz, but can you refresh our memories as far as certain things that you are active in the New Paltz community?
Right. I'd never been to New Paltz in my life until March of 2004. I was pretty newly ordained. I was ordained in 2001. I had been in one church. I had transferred and been in another church. And I had a mentor. Her name is Kay Greenleaf. Kay was the minister in Poughkeepsie at that time. And Kay and I used to meet on Saturday and eat breakfast at Karen's and talk about my ministry. I was struggling then. I was having a hard time with a lot of things. And she was supporting me and providing a shoulder for me to cry on and really helping me get through it. And we talked one day about my going up to Albany with her to lobby, and I couldn't go. But I said to her, the next time you do anything, I want to do it with you. And she said, okay. And then Jason West decided to marry people in New Paltz, and he got stopped, and Kay took over for him. And she called me on a Thursday night and said, I'm marrying 13 couples in New Paltz on Saturday. Will you help me? And I said I would. So that's how we got involved in the wonderful celebration of marrying all these people here in New Paltz. I'm sorry? They were gay couples. Did I not say that? That's
Quite a
wonderful.
challenging time for you,
Yeah,
but you handled it well, I'm sure.
I learned a lot.
The results are evident. What activities are you involved in Woodland Pond at this time?
I have to back up. one of the many things I learned was that gay marriage is not the term. The term is same-sex marriage, because that includes everybody. Sorry, the question is, what am I involved in now? I do primarily two things here at Woodland Pond. I do music and I do sustainability. The music is with the Pondaliers, and we are having a concert tonight, and I expect to see all of you there, please.
Lock the doors.
What?
Let's just lock the doors.
Oh, we can keep them here. What a good idea. And the other thing is I'm a founding member of the Sustainability Committee, and we do a lot of different projects around our environmental consciousness and saving the environment.
Is there anything you can share with us about your life here at Woodland Pond? And can you follow it up with a little of advice to the audience?
My life here at Woodland Pond is enriched very much by the fact that there are people here who get sick and die. And we learn how to manage that. We learn how to live with that and to help each other. And it is a privilege. And it's a similar privilege to be a minister, by the way, because you are with people during those times in their lives. But here at Woodland Pond, we're all sort of with it, you know? I mean, we all know people who have gotten sick. We all know people who have passed away if we've been here very long. And the gift is just to not waste any time, because we don't have any time to waste. The gift is to be as present as you can be to every day, and to be as open and as loving as you can be every day, because you never know. You just never know how many days you have. And of course, that's true of everybody, but it's especially true of people in this population. And so it's a heartbreaking place to live sometimes, but it's also very enriching.
I know what you say when I know what you meant when you say just let it go. I gave up my dog because I said I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow, the next day. So let him have a nice life with somebody. And it was hard, but you know, sometimes you have to give up certain things in life and accept others. Okay, well, we would like to know if there are any questions from the audience for Tyler, Lynn, or Dawn.
I'm going to do the microphone, but I'm going to have the first question. Dawn, you said you grew up in, I believe you said Methodist family, and what made you become a Unitarian Universalist minister then?
That's a good question. I kept marrying Catholic boys is the answer to the question. I've been married twice, both to a Catholic boy. And by the time I got to the time in my life when Paul was with me, I had become not quite unchurched, because I don't think that could happen to me, but I wasn't going to church anyplace. And when Paul and I got married, and after we had our child, we decided that we needed to be in a church community, and the Unitarians were the natural place for us to go. And it was a good fit for us from day one. So that's how I ended up a Unitarian Universalist.
Good. Other questions?
Thank you all for sharing your stories. And Marie, you've done a lovely job too. I hesitate to ask my question because it's not an easy one, and it's something I struggle with all the time. I was raised Catholic all the way through high school, nuns, uniforms, married a Catholic man, but we didn't raise our children in the Catholic Church. And what I struggle with is how to understand God. And, you know, there's a 12-step program and they talk about God, but they say God as you understand God. So my question to you is, how do you understand God?
I heard a talk recently in Shalom Space. The rabbi's name is Blumenthal. What's her first name? Rena. She was incredible. She was talking about God as a metaphor. God is, in my view, too mysterious for any of us to understand. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that God is not one thing. God is everything. So she was talking about God as water and God as fire and God as, you know, living things. And it was a wonderful talk. And I really resonated with that idea that God can be everything. In my faith, in Unitarian Universalism, there is a great variety of belief, and we have no theology to which we adhere. So some people are, you know, believe in God. I don't think we have very many Trinitarians among us because we are Unitarians. That's one God. But there are, you know, there are people who are Jewish by heritage, people who are agnostic, atheist, the whole range, and that's a big tent. And I always enjoyed addressing that congregation and trying to help us all understand more about divinity and what it means to be holy and so on. I did have a congregation that was, there are Unitarian congregations that are very allergic to Christianity. They have a lot of disaffected Christians in them, and they don't want to talk about Jesus. And there was a point in that church when I stood in the pulpit and said, listen, I came out of a Jesus church, and I'm going to talk about Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Get used to it.
That's for all of us. Yes. As I said, I always questioned a lot from little on, past the dinosaurs, and questioned a lot about why God always had to be a he. And of course, in the feminist movement and when I was studying for ministry, I very strongly advocated God as a she also. I'm kind of moved beyond that while not excluding that. And for me, in a calling where I really had to wrestle and fight, I have more often than not found God in that wonderful passage from the Old Testament, from Hebrew scriptures, where God is the still small voice. The still small voice that called me at one time and just in an experience I can't even explain, but said, it's going to be hard, but I will be with you. And that was the beginning for me. And just that realization along the way, I can't define God, but I know this powerful presence is with me, within me, beside me, and still speaking in a small voice, and sometimes has to yell at me quite loudly.
I think my two colleagues have given great answers, and I subscribe to both of those theories. I am an Episcopal priest. We recite one of the creeds in every service. It delineates the outlines of the Christian faith. And yet, while we're acknowledging that's the understanding that we have of our faith, we also are not required to attest to all of the elements in it, which is lucky, because if I'd had to do that, I wouldn't be able to get ordained. Because my sense, as Dawn said, is that metaphor is a better tool to understand God than theology. And a rabbi friend of mine, we were having a very funny conversation about insistent parishioners who knew best. And he said, isn't it interesting with all those people for whom metaphor is an impossibility? And it's tragic, really, because the more expansive we get in our thinking about God, the better it fits the universe, the better it fits our lives, the better it fits our days, even, because the idea that God is with us might be scary to some who had other plans, but in fact, it's a confidence builder and a reminder that there's a peace in a belief in a God that is part of the universe, is all the forces of the universe. And that's done it for me with people who are trying to find their way to confirmation or find their way to ordination. We can't attest to the truth of much of what our faiths say, but we can acknowledge them as stepping stones in our respective denominations and other faiths. But a friend of mine in Alaska who was way better educated in religion than I at the time came up with the forces of the universe. And I thought that really covers it all. And that really takes care of all the issues of gender, of all the other complications. I think it's kind of ironic that Christians claim to be monotheists, and yet they've got a three-part God. So, we live and learn and try to get along. Well, you don't need that, do you?
So I don't know how many times the Bible stories were rewritten and translated and changed, but I do read the New Testament a lot. And the stories about Jesus are pretty clear that he strove to told everyone to feed the hungry, house the homeless. He was very much for social justice, for the downtrodden, for the immigrant, welcoming everyone and really fighting and taking care of the lesser than. What are your thoughts, this is for all of you, about people who might now in our time take these stories and present Jesus as a gun-toting, immigrant-hating, gay-hating, woman-hating, rich-loving, poor-hating force, which I don't read that in the stories, but yet this seems to be pretty predominant with some people nowadays.
Thanks, Joe. I thought we were friends. It is a marvel how folks can proof text the Bible to suit themselves, find something in there that says, oh, this is the truth of the Bible, not the rest of it, nowhere else, just right here. And it's pathetic and it's very sad. It's very destructive. I like to tell the story when I was in seminary. I was always looking for boiled down answers, and somebody quipped one day, well, here's a boiled down answer. God was pretty tired of what humanity was doing and looked around and saw his son Jesus sitting there and said, Jesus, go down there and straighten them out. So Jesus goes down to earth and says, look, folks, you've got 635 commandments in the Hebrew Bible. You are not managing them well. We've even got the 10 commandments. You're not managing even those well. So here, I'm going to boil it down for you. Love God and love your neighbor. And if you can't figure out which one of those to do, love your neighbor, because that's how you love God. So that to me is the core. The rest of it is seasonal. It is historical. Much of it is tragic. But that's the bottom line, is service to your fellow human.
One of the things that rankles me the most in what you're speaking of now is the word evangelical. Evangelical became a prominent used word after the Reformation, and it means gospel centered. So it's all that you were speaking of in the way that Jesus spoke, taught us to treat one another, be open to one another, care for one another. And the fact that that word evangelical is used by some of the most hate-filled people that I've ever run into now just makes my blood boil. They have ruined a word that is so beautiful and just destroyed it. Yeah. And hopefully one time we're going to be able to get back and understand in a fuller understanding. After we go through the bottom, sometimes you have to bottom up to come back up. And that's what I'm praying is happening right now in our nation.
I really don't have much to add. It's heartbreaking. I love the church, and I am so distressed and disappointed to see the church becoming, parts of the church becoming so politicized and so destructive. When was it that we said, "What would Jesus do?" What would Jesus do? It's very scary and very sad.
Any other questions?
At one point, you asked about the steps to feeling called to ministry. And in the mid 90s, I was living in Seward, Alaska as the city manager, and Molly was living in Anchorage, Alaska with our daughter, getting her through high school before she moved to Seward. And I went to the little tiny Episcopal church there, and the priest preached a sermon on what would Jesus do. And he held up a book, and I think it was written in the Depression. I'm not sure about this, but that was the name of it, What Would Jesus Do? And it was about a town it was a railhead town in Virginia where they decided for a year they would base all their decision making at the bank, at the city council, everywhere on what would Jesus do, as if everybody was, a Christian. But of course, everybody did what Jesus would do, and everything got better, and everybody got friendly, and everybody got religion, and it was great. But it was a very curious notion that I was fascinated enough to read about it, or to want to borrow the book and read it. And then somebody came out with WWJD, the slogan, and it ended up on the rear pocket of women's pants, and all kinds of things, all kinds of things were done with that slogan. But it's not a bad question to ask. You don't need that, do you?
Any other questions from the audience? If not, I have one more. I don't want to hog it, but
Not really.
actually I do. So what can we do? Those of us, just a follow-up to my last question, those of us who do see religion as a method to help people, and we want to help hungry, sick, homeless, needy people, foreigners, people of various genders, sexual orientations, gender identities. We want a big tent, and we want the spirit of God to. What can we do? We're feeling depressed right now. What can we do?
I guess you are my friend. An hour ago, I was sitting in the Bible study on the other side of that wall, working on the meditation for today from Forward Day by Day, which is an Episcopal Church publication. And among the readings that it asked that we entertain today was Psalm 37, which opens, "Do not fret because of the wicked. Do not be envious of wrongdoers." And I once very glibly suggested to somebody, I know why bad things happen to good people. I just don't understand why good things happen to bad people. And I thought I was being very cute and funny. And this guy just froze me with a stare and said, wait here. And that we were at the church. He went and got a prayer book and read me the opening of this psalm. You know, it tells us that our goodness is important and we need to maintain that. We need not to be turned toward evil or wickedness. It tells us that God recognizes our goodness. And the other form of this, do not be envious of wrongdoers. I don't think that's a problem with what you're talking about. You're not envying them, but being fretful about people who are trying to manipulate the political system isn't helpful. Working to make the political system recover and get better and restore our confidence in a constitutional democracy is what it's about.
It's a good question. I think what we're doing here at Woodland Pond is a great example. The outreach into the community, a past food drive, I heard we raised $10,000 and over 20 boxes of food. That's an incredible witness. As far as individually, I'd be what you preach, what you say. And I found in New Paltz itself, I've joined a church that the pastor is gay, and the way they are involved in the community is just amazing. And being part of that in what small way I can do now with some of my limited physical condition, but it's a way of outreach and still showing love. And I discovered that when I was doing hospice ministry too, with a great many of my patients who had really turned off on the church because it was so law-filled. You know, I didn't go to church every Sunday and all this kind of stuff. So what was God going to do to me? God was going to send me to hell. And just being able to be with the person and witness in a way that wasn't theology, that wasn't prescribing a certain liturgy or something like that that we must do, and reminding them of the most powerful words I think that I found in scripture, which are Christ on the cross and the thieves that were making fun of him, one on the left and one on the right. And the one on the right, I think it was the right, why are we making fun of him? And then saying, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And realizing that wasn't faith. He wasn't acting as if he could recite the 10 Commandments or the Apostles' Creed or whether he was baptized. But one small spark in him saw something that was beyond what he was, saw goodness that was beyond. And our Lord answering him, today you will be with me in paradise. And I think that's kind of a words that we have to share with each other all the time. It's not what we describe as principles of faith or anything like that, but it's the love that reaches out and will take us for whatever we are, the slightest amount of understanding that we have and saying, that's enough. I love you that much that you're going to be with me. And we got to keep loving each other, even when we disagree with them wholeheartedly.
And to that, I would add, protect yourself, take care of yourself. This is in many ways an extremely toxic world right now. And I limit my news on television. I limit my news in print. I understand that I need to protect myself, my soul, if you will, from all the all the wickedness and all the commentary about the wickedness that's going on in the world right now. So that's one thing. And love God and love each other is the rest. I think we are beyond privileged to live here, where we are safe and where we are, where there's a culture of kindness, and that helps me get through the day and not not believe that all of the wickedness that's going on is going to continue forever. Um, you know, do what you can and don't worry about the rest.
Well, thank you, wonderful panelists and wonderful host. You gave us a lot to think about. And thank you, wonderful audience, for coming. Tyler's going to hold confession now if anybody is dressed for the part. We're going to have a long one. So thank you, everybody. And as I said, the activities committee will do this once a month, same time, same place, and we'll alternate between residents and staff. So we all get to know each other and hear our stories. And you gave great stories. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marie. You did a great job.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
too.